The galaxy had never seen color like this before. For eons, the stars burned in their steady shades, white, red, blue, unchanging, predictable, silent. Civilizations had risen and fallen under those same ancient lights, believing the cosmos to be as fixed as stone. But then came humanity, and with them, something that no alien empire, no ancient machine, and no cosmic architect had ever imagined. The idea of painting the stars. The arrival of the uninvited. When the fleets of the K'Chwarar Dominion first entered the Sol system, they expected to find another primitive planet, another race struggling with engines and orbiting satellites. That's how most conquests went: fire, domination, and assimilation. But what they found on Earth was something they could not categorize. Humans were not unified, not yet. Their wars still scarred the planet. Their hunger for resources still bled into space. And yet, in every city, in every corner of their cracked world, the K'Chwarar's observation drones saw something strange. Light displays. Humans, whether in the form of neon advertisements, festivals of lanterns, fireworks that tore the night sky, or digital art projected into buildings, seemed obsessed with light. To the K'Chwarar, who saw stars as only fuel or navigation, this obsession looked primitive, childish. They didn't understand. Not yet. The mistake of the K'Chwarar. The first strike on Earth was brutal. Entire cities vanished under beams of compressed plasma. Oceans boiled, skies split apart, and Earth's defenses, primitive missiles, railguns, and a few orbital weapons, burned into ash. The K'Chwarar expected surrender within days. That was the usual script. But Earth didn't surrender. Instead, humans looked up at the smoking heavens and whispered a simple, angry truth. You can burn our cities, but you will never steal our light. And so began the resistance, not with weapons of power, but with weapons of beauty. The first canvas. The first act of defiance was almost laughable. In the ruins of New Shanghai, a group of surviving engineers and artists hijacked the remains of a satellite array. Instead of broadcasting surrender, they synchronized the broken satellites and projected a massive ribbon of light across the night sky, an artificial aurora, shimmering over a burning Earth. Billions looked up from their shelters, from rubble, from scattered starships. For the first time since the invasion, they saw not destruction, but art. The K'Chwarar fleet commanders mocked it. Child's play, they said. Decoration, they scoffed. But their younger soldiers, their scouts, their drone pilots, reported something unusual. Their sensors were being confused. The light patterns bent signals, disrupted targeting systems, even scrambled their faster-than-light comm relays. In trying to make art, humans had accidentally made a weapon, the spread of the stars. Soon, more acts followed. Across Earth and its few surviving colonies, humans began projecting lights into the sky. Cities synced their surviving grids into massive star-shaped bursts of energy. Orbital stations, half destroyed, reprogrammed their reactors to spit beams into space. And then came the first painted star. In a desperate move, the survivors on Mars overloaded a fusion reactor on Phobos, one of Mars's moons. But instead of detonating it, they channeled it through a prism-like array of mirrors scavenged from telescopes. The result, a brilliant starburst of rainbow light, hanging over Mars like a beacon. The K'Chwarar ships around Mars faltered. Their targeting failed. Their navigational cores spun into error loops. And then the impossible happened. A K'Chwarar ship crashed into its own fleet, blinded by human color. Humanity had discovered something that made no sense to the galaxy. Light as warfare. Whispers in the dark. The galaxy was watching. Far beyond the K'Chwarar Dominion, other civilizations tuned into the war. Some with pity, some with curiosity, some with hunger. The Isher collectives, beings of translucent crystal, whispered to each other that humans had found a way to sing to the photons. The MHYRTH swarm, insectoid colonizers, called it weaponized beauty. And the ancient Vaith archivists, who remembered the wars of 1,000 millennia, simply said, "This species is not fighting to survive. It is fighting to be seen." And that made them dangerous. The unseen commander. In the chaos, one figure began to rise. A human commander named Elias Wren. He wasn't the most decorated officer, not the strongest, not the most brilliant. But he understood something the others didn't. Humanity's obsession with beauty could be turned into strategy. Where generals talked about missiles, Elias talked about color spectrums. Where scientists debated shielding, Elias demanded artistry. His plan was insane, to turn the entire galaxy into humanity's canvas. The first galactic stroke. Elias's first order was simple. Using what little was left of Earth's fleet, he ordered the capture of KHYR beacons, massive machines used for interstellar navigation. Normally, these devices projected sterile pulses of light for ships to follow. Under human control, they became something else entirely. They became brushes. And with the stolen brushes, Elias ordered a stroke across the void. Not a weapon, not a fleet, but a giant painted star, visible across 3 systems. A shining, shimmering symbol that said, in every alien tongue, "We are here. We are human, and we will not fade." The fear of the KHYR. At first, the Dominion laughed. Then their ships began to fail. Their long-range sensors collapsed under spectral interference. Their AI war cores glitched. Entire fleets wandered into gravitational traps because their star charts had been replaced by human light paintings that mimicked navigation signals. The Dominion, the conquerors of 1,000 worlds, were now lost in the very galaxy they thought they controlled. And the galaxy itself? It watched in awe as a primitive race of flesh and bone painted stars as weapons, turning war into art and fear into beauty. The awakening of the canvas. The galaxy was beginning to whisper a name it had never spoken before. Not KHYR, not Dominion, not any of the empires that had ruled for millennia. The name was human. On worlds far beyond soul, creatures with no eyes and no mouths felt their sensors flare with colors they had never imagined. Light carried across void and void, bending through wormholes, threading between stars. It was not random, not chaos. It was art on a cosmic scale. Lines of brightness shaped into designs, curves drawn with impossible precision, colors mixed like brushstrokes on an infinite canvas. And at the center of this cosmic art movement was one stubborn commander, Elias Wren. Elias's gamble. On Earth, Elias stood before his ragged council. Generals, engineers, artists, and survivors crowded into the underground chamber lit by flickering LEDs. "We don't have weapons to match them," Elias said simply. "They burn worlds. They erase civilizations. They have fleets older than our species. But they don't have," he pointed at the ceiling where a hologram of the rainbow burst over Mars shimmered. "This." "Light," a general scoffed. "Not light," Elias corrected. "Meaning. They see photons. We see beauty. That's our weapon. And we're going to take it straight into their heart." The room fell silent. Then, slowly, heads began to nod. Because they understood. Humans had never been the strongest species on Earth either. But they had always been the most imaginative. The painted fleet is born. It began with wreckage. Every destroyed starship, every burning satellite, every broken orbital platform was collected. Instead of repairing them for war, humanity repurposed them for art. Massive sails of reflective alloy were stretched across space, designed to catch and redirect starlight. Fusion reactors were rewired not for weapons, but for bursts of spectrum light. Old telescopes became focusing lenses, and shattered engines became color emitters. It was madness. It was desperate. But it was also genius. And when the first formation of ships floated out from orbit, patched, irregular, and glowing with synchronized light, aliens who saw them gave it a name that stuck. The Painted Fleet. The first encounter. The Dominion struck again, furious and humiliated. A fleet of 50 warships descended upon Earth's orbital space. The Painted Fleet rose to meet them, not with cannons, not with missiles, but with light. As the KHYR ships locked weapons, the human fleet unfolded its reflective sails. In perfect coordination, the ships blasted beams of multicolored light, weaving patterns in space like a living tapestry. At first, the Quechua mocked. Then their targeting systems screamed. Their missiles veered off course, drawn to false heat signatures. Their AI warcores crashed, unable to parse the shifting color codes. And then the humans painted something impossible, a false star. Sensors across the Dominion fleet registered a new gravitational body that wasn't there, an illusion made of light. Confused, half their fleet swerved to avoid it and collided with one another. The battle wasn't one with destruction. It was one with confusion, beauty, and trickery. When the last Dominion ship limped away, humanity didn't cheer for survival. It cheered because, for the first time, they had painted the galaxy itself. The watching eyes. But humanity's defiance wasn't unnoticed. From the edges of known space, emissaries began to arrive. The Isher collectives, crystalline beings that refracted themselves into living rainbows, hailed humans as spectrum weavers. The MHYRTH swarm, insectoid hunters, hissed that humans had turned prey into predators with false suns. The Vaith archivists, ancient keepers of galactic memory, recorded every painted starburst and whispered among themselves, "This is new. This has never been." For the first time in history, humanity was no longer ignored. They were being watched. The betrayal within. Not everyone believed in Elias's vision. On Titan, a human colony struggling under Dominion raids, a faction of leaders demanded surrender. "Art won't save us," they spat. "We need guns. Real weapons. Stop painting stars and start killing." Elias visited Titan himself. He stood before their leaders, looked them in the eyes, and asked one question. "When the galaxy remembers us, do you want them to remember another empire of war, or the ones who taught stars to sing?" Some listened. Some didn't. And in the shadows, Dominion agents whispered into ears, promising survival in exchange for betrayal. The painted fleet grew stronger, but so did the risk of fracture. The grand illusion. The Dominion realized brute force wasn't enough. They began to adapt. Their ships filtered light, their AIs recalibrated, their weapons targeted with raw power instead of precision. So Elias escalated. He ordered the construction of something no human had ever dreamed, a painted nebula. Using captured beacons, refitted asteroid reactors, and entire fleets of drones, humanity projected light across a whole sector of space. Clouds of gas were illuminated into shifting murals. Stars glowed with impossible hues. Entire trade routes vanished into curtains of rainbow fog. When Dominion fleets entered, they found themselves lost inside a painting larger than a solar system. Some ships wandered in circles for days. Some fired blindly at illusions. Some simply stopped, overwhelmed by beauty, their alien minds struggling to comprehend why prey would make war look like art. It was the greatest illusion in galactic history. And it was only the beginning. The message to the galaxy. The painted fleet wasn't just fighting. It was speaking. Hidden in every beam, in every false star, in every painted nebula were messages. Binary codes, musical frequencies, fractal signals. To humans, they looked like art. To alien civilizations, they became transmissions. The message was always the same. We are human. We survive. We create. We shine. And slowly, across the fractured empires of the galaxy, beings who had never cared about humanity began to feel something unusual. Not fear. Not curiosity. But respect. The storm before the canvas. The galaxy had never been louder. Every comms channel, every starport, every hidden outpost echoed with one name. Humans. Not for their weapons, not for their power, but for their paintings in space. The painted fleet had turned battles into illusions, wars into performances, and death into living art. But in the Dominion's high citadel, far beyond the spiral arms, the lords of the Quechua were not amused. They gathered inside a throne hall carved into the skeleton of a dead star. Their voices were like blades scraping on metal as they argued. They humiliate us. They confuse our machines. They are prey pretending to be predators. They will be erased. And so, from the black vaults of their empire, The KHWR brought forth their ultimate weapon, something they had sworn never to use. It was called the Maw of Silence, a ship larger than moons, forged in a dying quasar. It did not fire beams. It did not drop bombs. It devoured light. Elias learns the truth. On the bridge of the Aurora's edge, Commander Elias Wren received the intelligence from Allied archivists. His face hardened as the hologram of the Maw spun before him, a living fortress of black alloy, absorbing every photon that touched it. "They're bringing a weapon that eats light," his science officer whispered. "Then they're not fighting us," Elias muttered. "They're fighting our art itself." For the first time, the painted fleet faced a threat that could erase their very canvas. And yet, Elias smiled, because every artist knows, true art is not light. True art is shadow. The final gathering. Humanity called for allies. The Isher, beings of crystal, bent their bodies into rainbow prisms. The MHYRTH swarm, once hunters, now flew beside humanity's ships. The Vaith archivists, neutral for centuries, finally declared, "We will witness history not as recorders, but as participants." And so, in the orbit of Saturn's pale rings, the largest coalition fleet in human history assembled. Rusting human ships patched with painted sails. Alien dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. Living swarms glowing with bioluminescence. The Maw of Silence was coming, and Elias whispered into the comms, "Then we will paint the last masterpiece. The Battle of the Black Canvas." It began with silence. The Maw of Silence slid into the system like a black eclipse. Rings of Saturn dimmed. Stars vanished. Even comms began to drop, swallowed by the void around it. One by one, the painted fleet fired beams, bursts, and illusions, only to watch them vanish into nothing. Their stars were swallowed. Their colors consumed. For the first time, their art failed. Panic rippled through the fleet. The Dominion's warships poured in, firing freely, using the Maw as a shield. And yet Elias stood calm. "Good," he whispered. "Let them erase the light, because that was never the masterpiece. The art of darkness." Elias gave the order. The painted fleet shut down every emitter. All sails folded. Every beam went dark. The galaxy blinked. The battlefield fell into pitch black. And then humanity painted not with light, but with darkness. Ships positioned themselves with impossible precision, forming constellations where light was absent. Between the shadows, stars in the background peeked through in patterns never before seen, patterns only humans could imagine. The fleet used the Maw's hunger against it, forcing it to erase chosen paths of light, carving black lines across the canvas of space like brushstrokes of night. The result? A mural not of brightness, but of void. The Maw had become their brush, the awakening of the stars. Aliens watching the battle gasped. From a distance, what emerged across the starfield was not chaos, but a figure. A human figure. A silhouette drawn from absence, standing against the galaxy. The Maw of Silence had devoured every photon humans guided it toward, and in doing so, it had painted Elias's vision. Across the night, the stars themselves seemed to form the shape of a human standing tall. A message to every world, every watcher. We are here. We stand. We endure. The fall of the Maw. The Maw roared with energy, destabilizing under the strain of consuming too much at once. Its gravity wells collapsed inward, black fire licking across its hull. Elias gave the final command. All ships, ignite the canvas. And for one last time, the painted fleet unleashed everything. Sails glowing, reactors bursting, lasers blazing not as weapons, but as colors. The darkness collapsed under the weight of beauty. The Maw of Silence cracked apart, consumed by its own hunger, vanishing into the black hole it created. The Dominion fleet broke, their discipline shattered. They had come to erase art and instead been forced to become it. The masterpiece is complete. When the battle ended, the skies above Saturn held the strangest sight in galactic memory. Where the Maw had died, a new nebula formed, swirls of light and shadow painted together by chance and human guidance. It looked like a brush stroke across the heavens. Aliens called it the Human Nebula. But humans gave it a simpler name: the masterpiece, the aftermath. The Dominion never fully recovered. Other empires, inspired by humanity's stand, rose in rebellion. The galaxy fractured into chaos. But in the chaos was also freedom. Humans did not become conquerors. They became artists of survival. The painted fleet remained, not as soldiers, but as wandering performers. They painted stars above ruined worlds, gave hope where there was none, and reminded the galaxy that even in darkness, there could be beauty. Elias's last words. Years later, Elias Wren stood aboard the Aurora's edge, older, scarred, but smiling as he watched a new fleet of ships paint colors into the void. Children from Earth and alien worlds laughed over comms, designing murals together in real time. He whispered to himself, words carried across the stars. Once, they tried to make us shadows. Now even the stars fear the dark we command. We are human, and we are the artists of the galaxy. And in the silence of space, the nebula shimmered like a canvas, waiting for its next brushstroke.